Alrighty, so next thing we're going to do on this truck is we're going to put the balancer on. But because I've got it, you know, a little bit more souped up than stock, I kind of want to pin the crank. I have never done this before, but I bought a kit. It looks really simple. I just read the directions, and you pretty much just install the crankshaft or the harmonic balancer, and then you install this, which is got 2 holes on it, and then this lines up on the crank and the balancer, and then you can drill it with this hole right here, and then you can use these little dowels to line up your balancer, well, so it doesn't spin on the crank. I have had one spin on the crankshaft before. I built an LS for a different car and was driving it, and I've lost my balancer, or I lost my belt a bunch of times. Couldn't figure out why. I was running a factory balancer without a keyway, and it spun on the crank and actually galled it up just a tiny bit. I was able to save it okay, but it took me a little bit to figure it out. It's something you don't always think about, but you really need to upgrade and key your balancer when you have more power than stock. So we're going to go ahead and do this. This is a little bit of the cheaper way, especially if you're running a stock crank. There's no keyway on these stock cranks, so if you don't have an aftermarket crankshaft, this is kind of a really good option to do it, and it's not very much. Plus the kit gave me 5 little dowels, so I can do up to 5 LS motors before I need a refill. So yeah, we're going to give it a try now. So I think that was pretty sweet. That drill bit was super nice. It drilled right through. They told you to mark the drill bit 1 5/8 depth so you can't drill too far. So I put that little piece of tape that was just flapping around just to make sure I didn't drill too far. And I mean, that took me like 3 or 4 minutes. So this is the end result. Very simple, but I mean, for a stock balancer, this thing only has a cam in it. It's not like it's a, you know, supercharged or turboed, or, you know, it's really just a cam, long tube headers, and a couple of valve train upgrades to support that. So this is like the perfect option. And yeah, so now that that's done, I can throw the balancer bolt in and go ahead and start working on everything else. So here we go. I think next up we're just going to put the transmission in. I got to unbox the torque converter, throw that in, and then rack the truck up, and we will put the transmission in. So here we go. Okay, this thing was a little bit of a pain in the butt to rack up, just because it's a single cab short bed, so the lifting points are super close together, but it's up. It doesn't go the highest in the air, but you know what? I'm totally okay with that. I am so stoked that I have the ability to have a lift in my shop. I've been waiting for this forever. So I have a nice spot I can work on it. You know, putting the transmission in is going to be 10 times easier. Putting the long tube headers is going to be way easier. So I am just super stoked. It is definitely tight clearance. You got to pay attention. You can't just lift it up and send it all the way up, but that's okay. It gets the job done. Okay, so we got the truck up in the air now, so we're going to throw the transmission in, but first we got to start with a flex plate, so let's get at it. Something I learned way later than I should have. Not all of the holes for the torque converter mounting bolts are the same. So if you look at that one, it's circular. If you look at this one though, it's oblong. So you can actually start with this one. If you put the, well, see how I lined it up over here? So the starter gap. So I can put the torque converter, or the transmission in with the torque converter and everything. If I start with this bolt and tighten it down and torque it, it actually lines up the other two, and you don't have to worry about, you know, starting one and then not having them aligned. I don't know why it took me so long to learn that, but now I know. It's kind of funny when you're doing engine swaps too, like you realize little things that you've missed, like the dowel pins for the transmission. Those are stuck in the old motor. Why there's none in this motor, I don't know. So when you do these motor swaps, you really got to kind of keep an eye out and go slow and make sure you don't miss anything. I would have noticed that once I slid the transmission up and it wasn't sitting correctly, but then I would have had to lower it back down and get it out of my way to install them. So sometimes it pays to go slow and, you know, pay attention and look around. So alright, here we go. We're going to go throw the torque converter in now. Okay, here we go. This is a torque converter from Brian Tooley, actually. It's just got a slight stall. Nothing crazy, but it's for a little bit overstock. Boom, in. Boom, in. You just like to spin it, give it a little jiggle back and forth, because if you don't put it all the way in and you slam the transmission and the engine back together and it's not fully seated, you can break the pump inside the transmission, which would suck, and then you'd be pulling it back out. So another thing that I just learned, from a coworker, is there's a little access panel down here. You can pop that out and make sure your finger does not fit behind the torque converter in the bell housing. If it does, it is not fully seated, but usually you hear like 3 clunk, clunk, clunks, and then it's fully seated. And you can tell this one's all the way in, so we're ready to rock. So one thing that I like to do after I bolt the transmission in with at least 2 bolts, you know, one on each side to make sure it's even, it's seated, I always reach through the starter hole and I twist the converter. If I cannot twist the converter, then I really mess something up, and you know, like I said earlier, I could have broken the pump. But you know, take your due diligence. But it's just a peace of mind thing for me, is to not bolt all of the bell housing bolts in and then try and spin the converter to line it up and then go, crap, it, you know, I gotta pull them all back out, slide the transmission back out and reseat the torque converter, or you know, something like that. You know, if I can't spin the converter by hand once it's in, I know something's wrong, and stop, don't put any more bolts in, figure out what the deal is, and then continue on. So that's just me, but that's what I like to do. Okay, so transmission's all bolted in. Next up, we're gonna just do the torque converter, but it's gonna be like impossible to get a camera angle on it for you, so I'll probably just zip those bolts in and spare you the detail. It does go right up in there, but you know, that's pretty hard to see. So yep, there's only 3 of them, so it shouldn't take me very long, and just get it done. Let's make it happen.